So we're now in the middle of, or we've got ourselves into the middle of the beer of Das Elyon Das Tachtin. And so far, what we've said is that the notions of Das Elyon Das Tachtin is not looking at the same thing from different angles. It's looking at it's considering two distinctly different things. In Das Elyon, the Yesh and the Ayin refer to two distinct things. And in Das Tachtin, the Yesh and the Ayin refer to two completely different things. And as such, the terms Yesh in each instance mean something completely different. And the terms Ayin also mean something completely different. So if we place them in a sort of in an order of Seder Shtalshlus, you have Yesh, Ayin, Ayin, Yesh. The Yesh of the Das Elyon is the Yesh Amiti, Atum Sein Seif. The Ayin is the Oinen Seish Lifnei Atimtzum, which is, why is it Ayin? Because it's not Metzias Klal. It's completely bottled and dovuk to Atoms itself. It's not together Metzias at all. The Yesh of Das Tachtin is the Yesh HaNivra. And it's a Yesh because it's Magish Metzias, it has a sense of itself. And the Ayin is the Ayin HaMahave, is that which creates the Yesh, which is the, broadly speaking, is the Eir of Atzilus. And it's not Ayin, meaning that it doesn't exist. It's not a Metzias Dover, just like the Ayin of Das Elyon. It has to be a Dover of some sort. It has to be a Metzias of some sort, otherwise we won't be able to create the Yesh. But from the perspective of the Yesh, the Ayin is Einin Musug. Because the Yesh is not Benimtza, it hasn't got the Yesh, the Yesh doesn't exist in the Ayin. It's not Illa v'Olul. And therefore it has no grasp of what that is, so it's called Ayin. And we explained that these two Ayins, the Ayin which is the Ein Seish Lifnei Atzimtzum, and the Ein Seish La'achar Atzimtzum, are really one Ayin split into two. It's not a separate Ayin, even though the meanings of them, when the Ayin is in Ein Seish Lifnei Atzimtzum, it's Ein Metzias Klal. When the Ein Seif is La'achar Atzimtzum, it's a Moker HaMahave, it's a creative, it's an originator, it creates things. So it has a Metzias of sorts. So how do you get from one to the other? How does the Ayin of the Das Elyon become the Ayin of the Das Tachtin? So that is going to be what we're going to explain. We're going to explain how it's the union of Tzimtzum. Tzimtzum facilitates that transition in the Ein Seif.
So it's Yesh Ayin Tzimtzum Ayin Yesh.
Yes, sort of. Yeah, I suppose that works. And where does this fit into the broader picture? The broader picture we're trying to explain is that you have to have Tzimtzum Ha'or in order that you can have the creation of the Yesh HaNivra. So Tzimtzum is a necessary component, is the component which enables there can be the Yesh HaNivra. To get from the Yesh HaMiti to the Yesh HaNivra, there has to be Tzimtzum. And that's going to explain, going back to Lulavarova, Kaved Malchuscha Yemeiru Ugvurascha Yetaberu, in order for Kaved Malchuscha, in order for the Levush of Malchus, in order for the Eisius Adibur of Malchus of Atzilus, to be able to be Mailim Umasi on the Eir and create the Yesh HaNivra, that all comes about because of Gvurascha Yetaberu, because of Tzimtzum. Tzimtzum in the Eir. Okay? But we've got a lot more to get through to fully flesh that out. Okay? So the bottom of the last paragraph of Amud Samach Aleph. So in order to understand how it is that you get from the Ein Seish Lifnei Hatzimtzum to become the Ein Seish La'achar Hatzimtzum, the Ayin of the Das Elyon to the Ayin of the Das Tachtin, you have to first of all understand more clearly the difference between these two ayins, these two stages in the ayin. Because even though they're both called ayin, but nevertheless, they are incomparable to each other. The first ayin, the first ayin, which is the yesh of das elyon, the ayin of das elyon, is a gilu from the etzem. It's the gilu eirin seif from the yesh, which is the yesh amiti. The spoiler ill, we explained above, shul bechinas bittul b'metzias lagabi mekeira, it's in a state of absolute bittul. In regards to its mokir, sheidush, the atmosphere and seif, the yesh amiti, ad she'ein sheikh leim olav shem shem, to the extent that you can't even call it anything. Uken now the chol shem haru matayru magbil zadov shnikru shmoy alav. Once you call something by a name, you're already being magbilit, you're already defining it, you're already giving it a tziyur, you're already giving it hakbala, you're giving it dimensions, you're giving it definition, and definition by itself is saying that it's already a matzias because it's defined. When we say it doesn't even have a name, it means it's not definable. Just like the oir ha-Shemini shehu b'guf kader ha-Shemini doesn't have the name ziv.
And the name we give to it is a shlilustika name, which solves the problem.
What's the name we give? I'm using.
Yeah, it's a shlilus. It's a shlila, right? So it's not that we're giving him another name. That means it's nothing.
Right.
It means that we're not giving it a name, so to speak. Its name is not a name.
Yeah. Can only give something which is a metzias dovama a name. Because it has these dimensions, these definitions. You can then call it a name. Something that has no metzias at all. You can't give it a name. And therefore that's why you call it ayin, just like you said, Leigh. This is a little bit different to the way you're saying it. The shem ayin, when we refer to the ayin of the own seif lifnei hatzimtzum, the ayin of the yesha, the ayin of das elyon, the ayin of the yesha amiti, hu boy amiti mitzaratzme. It is a true definition of that thing. The ayin ve'efes mamishkin actually is ayin. Al shem zenikra ayin. The name it gets ayin is real. Hameir al hedem etziyusei. You're indicating it's non-metzias. Not different. I'm saying it's playing around with it.
Yeah, it's a bit different.
However, ayin beis, the second ayin, shua ayin shel yesh hanivra, which is the ayin of das tachton, the ayin of shlach ratzimtzum, masha nikra ayin mitzaratzme. We don't call it ayin because it's taka, not a metzias. Eirin seif achatzimtzum is taka metzias. The eirin of atzilus are taka metzias. Ki im mitzad nivroim. The reason why it's called ayin is only from the perspective of the nivroim. It's relative. And even then, the ayin doesn't mean it's not a metzias. The la pirush ayin al shem she'enim musig. And the reason why it's called ayin is not saying because it doesn't exist. If you're already acknowledging you're a yesh that comes from an ayin, you're not saying you come from nowhere. You're coming from somewhere which is incomprehensible to you. How do you vade mitzad nivroim? Because we're talking about something that's incomprehensible, we're saying it's incomprehensible from the Nivroim's perspective. The Nivroim have no concept what it is. They don't even know how to refer to it. He's calling it ayin because it has nothing else what to call it. Because he doesn't know what it is. A name is something, is a definition, is a reflection of that. You understand its tziyur, you understand its dimensions, its definition. Since the Nivroim don't understand its how to define it, they can't give it a name. They call it ayin. But they're not saying it's ayin, it doesn't exist. El ha-pirush, gam ha-pirush ayin al shem shu bechinas leidava. So gam kin rak shu lei bechinas dava debiyah. We're just saying it doesn't exist like I exist. It's not when you say the ayin of the yesha, the ayin legabi the yesha nivra, the ayin of das tachtoin, you're not saying that it doesn't exist at all. It's a figment of someone's imagination, and even that it's not. It's not even a figment of someone's. It's just it doesn't exist. That's not what you're saying. That's not the pshat when you say it's ayin And you're saying it's not, it doesn't exist. You're saying it doesn't exist like I exist. It's not an existence of Bia. The ayin is the pshat. Ayin, it's not a Matthias of Bia. Shu b'chinas Matthias yesh mamash. Because the Matthias of Bia, we're talking about a real Matthias. To the extent of a yesh nivra, hagashmi. So alzalnu imrim sha'amoker ha'mahave u'b'chinas lidava. When we refer to the thing that creates the Metzias Gashmi, we say it's not a davar. It's not of the sort of existence that exists in Bia. The shadish, the origin, the creative power that enables the emergence and the existence of the nivra, of the Metzias of the Metziasan of Eilamis Bia, is not of that. It doesn't have the same qualities and characteristics. But we can't say that it's non-existent, or it's in a state of complete, a state of a complete non-entity, like we would say about the ayin of das elyon, the onen seif lifnei atzimtzum. Hainu she'enem metzias nimtza klal, k'mo ha'ayin shel yesh amiti chuli. The entire existence of the world emanates from it, comes about because of it. How can you say that the origin of something is not a thing?
So if it isn't a thing, it can't create anything.
So where do they come from? If you acknowledge that they come from somewhere, then ayin is not the pshat, a non-entity at all. It's not of the characteristics of the entities that it creates, and that's why it's incomprehensible to the things that it creates. But it must have some substance to it. It must be in a state of existence. Otherwise, it won't be able to confer existence to something else. Ube'emes. The Metzias hanivroim mashim nimtzoim du bechinas yesh davar. Mizeh muchlech shemekeiram hamahavam hu bechinas loy davar. So the truthful way of approaching this is like this. We are conscious and aware of the Metzias of the Nivroim, our own existence. We are conscious that there's such a thing called a Yesh HaNivra, right? That is axiomatic to us, right? So it's a basic starting point. The thing that creates these things that sense their own existence, by definition must be something which is not of that thing. Why? Ki yadua the Metzias hayesh ef sheliyos bebechinas ilava alu zemizeh adin shir. So this is a very philosophical argument. The Metzias of a yesh cannot be produced ilava alu. The premise of ilava alu, cause and effect, is that the effect is to an extent, to a degree, found in the cause. The process of going from ilava alu is a matter of transition out of the state of the ilah to the state of the alu. But the alu was present in the ilah in a more sublime way, but always there. So if we take as a principle, we're talking about Yesh HaGashmi. Let's take a Yesh HaGashmi, not just talking about Nivraim of Ilam HaBriya. Ilam has HaGashmi. If you want to say that the existence of materiality was produced in a manner of Ilava Olu, what would be what would we conclude? That ilah va'olul continually, it never ends. It would be an eternal process of continuous ilah va'olul, because each ilah is an olul of a previous ilah.
Right, so we're saying our world is what?
Our world is a metzias yesh.
Right.
If we were to say, you cannot say that the existence of our world is a result of ilah va'olul, of infinite emanations.
What would be our world?
Ours is yesh ma'ayin.
No, that's our ilah.
No.
What would we be the ilah to?
I'm the ilah to you.
But the world.
Hmm?
The world is the cause of which effect?
Further effects in the world. The continuation of the world.
Does everything in the world need to have
You saying it can become extinct?
Well,
no, everything, all energy will then transfer into something else. כי ידוע דמציאס היש יש לי בחינת אילה ואולו זה מזה עד אין שיר דהיינו שלא יהיה אסכולס למציאס ישוסי. Because if you say it's ilah va'olul, you're saying basically it never began. It was always there.
In some form.
In some form. Hari kol metzias hayesh hu mugbul, and you can't have something which is mugbul. A metzias yesh is for sure mugbul, right? Adava gashmi is mugbul. It has vav ketzavis. It has dimensions, definitions. Imkain eich yev b'chinas bligbul. You'd be claiming that it was b'chinas bligbul. Adava gashmi cannot be. There cannot be an eternity to the world and to matter. This is a big philosophical argument. Is the world eternal? So, one of the arguments against the eternity of the world, the Rambam, the big issue with the Rambam, because Aristotle thought the world was eternal. And the Rambam says, no, it's yesh ma'ayin. Yesh ma'ayin. So, one of the arguments is about that if the world is eternal,
and it always did exist,
and then you can't say about something that's mugbul that is bleegable. You're claiming on a mugbul that it's bleegable, and that's illogical.
But if Zman is a nivra, then what does it mean the world is eternal?
Who says Zman isn't? They would say Zman isn't a nivra.
If Zman is a nivra, then how would that argument work? Right. So when we say eternal, what does that mean? Time goes on forever, but the world might not, right? It could just turn into different matter. As you said, there could be a explosion, and then the world's whatever will turn into something else.
Right.
Right. And it would go on for an infinite amount of time. But if time doesn't exist, then how can something that doesn't exist go on forever?
I don't understand your question.
If time is also nivra, right?
Right.
And we say it can go on forever, the world.
You're going forward or you're going backwards?
Forward.
Forward is not a problem. Meaning that it's a different problem, but it's not the same problem.
I think that the world was always here, you're saying. Oh. Okay.
So this is the principle. I think in the footnote brings them in the book, no? Yeah. 622.
We learned about this in Sefer Hakira.
Right. If you want
the proof about the people.
Yeah. If you want to have the arichas, you can go to Sefer Hakira.
I'm thinking about that, but if you think about it on the other hand, let's say there was a huge asteroid that hit the Earth, even though it's loads and loads of people.
But the asteroid is also a gashmi.
No, it hit people. The whole argument about people being like loads and loads more people, right? You could just say that an asteroid hit the Earth and everybody died, except a few people. Right?
Okay.
Therefore, the whole argument about there being loads and loads of people wouldn't even work.
Okay.
Okay, whatever. Right, damn.
Enjoy. You can learn the whole Sefer Hakira. You enjoy it. Anyway, so here that's the argument. We have to exclude the possibility that the thing that we know does exist, which is the Yesh HaGashmi, or we have a notion of its existence,
Right.
that could not have come about through u-va-Yom. Because on the principle, because kol metzias hayesh hu mugbul, ve'im kein eich yeh bebechinas bli gvul. El bechach loymar sheyesh haschala lemetzias yeshusay. There must be a point where Yeshus Hanivra begins. Shekod, this expression, Shekodmei haheder v'nischadish, that prior to it there was heder, there was the non-existence of its metzias, v'nischadish. So this is the argument for chidush ha'olamis as opposed to tmidias ha'olamis. That originally, at the outset, its metzias was not. It was loydava. It was not such a metzias. It was not the metzias that we know of it to be. And from that state of non-metzias, it became a metzias. So the existence of all the Nivraim is itself a raya, that because they are mugbal, that it must start from a place. Everything that's going to expire, human beings, right? They're going to expire. Human being is a davar nifsad. Then it must have an origin, and that origin can't be another davar nifsad. Otherwise, it will be bligvul. If its origin was a davar, then that thing would also be nifsad, and etc. Adin shir, and that can't be, because from a davar mugbul you can't have something that's bligvul. But, and this is the big but, aval. Gam ze muchrach mi metzias hanivraim sha'amaki hu b'metzias nimtza. As much as we deny the possibility that the origin of the metzias nivra, of the metzias yesh, is itself a yesh, and hence we call it ayin, right? It can't be a metzias yesh, with the characteristics of the metzias nivra, because we run into all the problems we just mentioned. But we must also say that there is a metzias of another sort. Vis-a-vis the yesh nivra, it's bechinas ayin and leidov. Because all characteristics of the nimtza, of the metzias that's going to come from it, has to be denied. You have to deny from the moker amahava, the ayin amahava, the oirin seif shel achar atzimtzum, the basically atzilus, that it has any of the qualities of olam espiyah, hasn't got any of the qualities of metzias yesh hagashmi, metzias nivra.
Because otherwise, it will be the valo.
It itself would be mugbal. Yeah, it would be mugbal, and then you're claiming it would have to also come something mugbal. And we can't, from a davar mugbal, it has to have a beginning.
Right. Characteristics
Its
of
beginning.
It's kavul.
Yeah.
To deny it's kavul.
It's gvul in a manner of biyah. It can't have the biyah qualities. But it has to exist. So, relative to the Yesh HaNivra, we call it ayin, which is, has no clue what it is and everything. But we're not concluding, it's not coming out of nowhere. The world didn't just come poof out of it. It wasn't a magic trick. That out of nothing came something. Out of a completely different notion of metzias came out the metzias yesh hagashmi. But it was a metzias. It's such a metzius that legabi the ayin arishain. If you compare it to the ayin of the yesh of the das elyon, the ayin shel ein seishlim ne'atzimtzum is b'chinas yesh.
Well, I know that you can't compare it to something that doesn't exist.
Ein seishlim ne'atzimtzum exists
Right.
in the sense it's not a metzius nimtza, but it exists.
That's Yeshamiti.
The yesh amiti exists, and it has the gilu that comes from it is completely bottled to it. The ziv hashemesh is for sure in the guf kader hashemesh. It's not just for sure in the guf kader hashemesh. It's there b'yesas v'yesas. It's a much stronger oid.
And that's the ayin.
But eina ila b'shem ziv klal because it's completely bottled. That's why we call it ayin, and it's true to call it ayin.
The ayin we're talking about is the ziv when it's in the shemesh or when it's outside the shemesh.
Mm-hmm.
The ayin shel Yeshamiti.
Yeah.
Talking about when it's inside the guf kadosh shemesh.
It's like the moshel in the moshel.
Why no when it's outside?
Then it's the in the achrat tzimtzum.
Right. And what happens then? Is it?
It's metzius because it's chutz. It's chutz
And
l'makom
is that our ayin over here?
to an extent. Yeah.
The start of it.
But here he's going further. He's saying he's going to legabi. This is called yesh.
Right.
So the relationship between the owner seishlik ne'atzimtzum and achrat tzimtzum, we called both levels ayin. One is called the ayin of the yesh hamiti. One's called the ayin yesh hanivra. But in relation to each other, it's similar to an ayin v'yesh situation. Okay.
Right.
והנה בייס דייס הנעל בדרך כלל בחינס דס אלין הוא מן אין סייף המאציל אל הנאצלים.
Right.
So now we're going to sort of narrow the terms here of Das Elyon, Das Tachlim. Das Elyon, Das Tachlim, we've declared it to be a very broad category, starting Das Elyon, Yesh Amiti, to the Ein Seif Shlech Tzimtzum, Ein Seif Shlech Achrat Tzimtzum, Elam is Biyah. Yeah? We're going to narrow it now. B'derech klal, b'chinas Das Elyon, hu min Ein Seif HaMa'atzil, El HaNe'etzalim. So Ein Seif HaMa'atzil is the Ein Seif Shlech Tzimtzum. And the Ne'etzalim is the Ein Seif Shlech Achrat Tzimtzum. Ne'etzalim meaning Atzilus. Right? They are the Ne'etzalim. The Ne'etzalim b'chlalim b'chinas ayin shel hayesh ha'amiti. So we sort of take the whole Ein Seif Shlech Tzimtzum. Instead of making the division between Atmas Ein Seif and Atmas Ein Seif and the Ein Seif, we call that Yesh and Ayin. We put that all into one category and call that Yesh. And then the Achrat Tzimtzum we're going to call Ayin.
The Gabi Achret Tzimtzum, the Ayin Shel Yesh Nivra, when it's inside the Yesh Nivra, is considered Yesh. Not because it's Yesh within itself, but because that Yesh Hamiti is Yesh, and it's bottled to the Yesh Hamiti, it would be called Yesh, right?
I didn't understand what you said. Try again.
So the Ayin of that, the Ayin of the Ayin of the second Ayin, right?
1 second. We're changing the parameters now. So are you talking about what we said until now?
Until
Or are you
now,
moving into the new framework?
Is this Ayin of the Yesh HaMiti now actually considered Yesh, or we're just calling it that?
Well, it's because it is, you could say, because it is a ayin and bottle gamri.
And it is.
All there is the guf kader hashemesh.
So it is, in essence,
It's the yesh ha'amiti.
In essence, it is the Yesh HaMiti.
And we're saying it depends what we're talking about. Till now, we distinguish between them.
Right.
We called it yesh and ayin, das elyon. Now we're changing the categories.
So everything is a Yesh of some sort. We've got 3 out of 4 so far, and this might be the 4th one. That's also a Yesh, really.
Okay.
In one way or the other.
It depends what you're talking about.
Right.
You've got to know what you're talking about.
Compared to this now.
So if you've got your categories in place, Till now we've had 4 categories.
Right.
Yesh Amiti, Atmos Ein Sof. Ein Shel Yesh Amiti, Ein Sof Lifnei HaTzimtzum, and that constitutes Das Elyon. We then had Ein Sof Shel Achar HaTzimtzum, which is the Ein Shel Yesh HaNivra, and you had the Nivroim of Biyah, which is the Yesh HaNivra. And that's those two are Das Tachtin.
Right.
Now we're combining the whole of what we previously called Das Elyon,
Right.
which was a Yesh and an Ayin, and we're calling that entirety the Yesh of Das Elyon.
Right.
And now, since we're moving on, and then the Ein Sof Shel Achar HaTzimtzum remains an Ayin. Until now, we called it the Ayin of the Yesh HaNivra. Now we're calling it the Ayin of the Yesh HaAmiti. So we're gonna have a much more nuanced understanding of this Ayin Shel Achar HaTzimtzum. Ayin Shel Achar HaTzimtzum, we just said, okay, it's not. When we call it Ayin, we don't mean Ayin Mamish. We mean Ayin like we would mean it in Das Elyon, where it's Ayin. When we say Be'emes, it's Ayin. Ayin is Amiti Mitzad Atzmai. We said no, it's only Ayin because the Nivroim don't understand it, but it's a loy dover in the sense it's not in any sense the dover of the Nivroim Biyah. However, it's still a Metzias Nimtza. Otherwise, how could it be a Mokkah Mahave? Because that is the notion of the Ayin of Das Tachtin. Now we're saying these Netzalim are also the Ayin that can be understood, but Derech Klal can be understood as the Ayin of the Yesh Amiti of Das Elyon. So how is the inyan of Ayin in it an emesa toyar? How is it dobak and bottle?
Right.
Because we're now just, instead of talking about it in a much broader sense, we're limiting it in. That's why it's interesting. It says b'derech klal when it says here at the beginning. It seems like it's more b'derech prat, but maybe derech klal is in a way of being koilel everything much more. So let's see. The ne'etzolim b'chlal him b'chinas ayin shel yesh amiti, shu b'chinas gilui ha'etzem, u'b'teilim legamri legabi mekedim u'b'chinas bittul amiti de b'chinas das elyon anal. That the ne'etzolim, generally speaking, have this quality of absolute bittul and dveikus in their mokim. That's why Chochma Batzilus is called Keach Ma, the Keach of bittul. What do we say there? Clearly, what is Madrigas HaChochma? The Bechinas Echel, the Emesh Ulavadi, Hu-va-Ein Zulasi, V'zui Madrigas HaChochma, the famous Hago in Perek Lamed. That what is Chochma? Chochma is the manifestation of the Achdus of Hashem. The only He exists is complete bittul to Hashem. And you think Chochma, what is Chochma Batzilus? It's the onlyness of Hashem. Because the Eir Atzilus, the Eir HaChochma is completely bottled. But Abba Mekanan of Atzilus. And we explain how each Madreg of the Dalet Eilamis is what's Goiva, the perspective or the Geder of the different spirits is Goiva. So in Atzilus, it's Abba Mekanan is the Atzilus. The Abba, the Chochma. Whereas Bina is in Bria. Is Goiva, the tchunas of Bina are Goiva, and in Yitzira it's Zah, and Nasi is Malchus. So it's not just Chochma of Atzilus that is on this Goger Baldika Madrega of complete bittul to Elikus, and is an Ayin Mamish. Abba Mekanan of Atzilus. Lachen Kol HaBittul Atzilus b'chinas Yichudila. You can extend that whole state of bittul and vekus of the Eir to the entirety of Atzilus, such that the entirety of Atzilus is Madar of Yichud Elah. Das Elyon Yichud Elah, yeah? V'lachen Klolos Atzilus nikra Rosh Hashanah. That's why we call it Klolos. In general, we say Atzilus is called a Rosh Hashanah. Yochid, the Yechidah Shel Eilam, Eilam HaAchdus. The u-va-Chayu Ichad, the u-va-Gamu Ichad Chuli. All of the things. So what's Das Tachtin then? So we've sort of encroached on the ayin of the Yesh HaNivra. Till now we said the ayin, the Ein Sof Shel Achar HaTzimtzum, the Eir Atzilus is the ayin Shel Yesh HaNivra. So when we say Das Tachtin, what we mean of Bechinas Das Tachtin, hu mi Atzilus lebiyah, The olam is biyah hu bechinas yesh v'dava, bechinas gvul mamish, u'mekedom mahavam hu bechinas malchus da'atzilus, shenikra bechinas ayin legabi bechinas hayesh lebiyah. Ve'einem musam anivon debiyah. So it's just malchus v'atzilus. Atzilus is yichudei lo, das elyon is ayin, bottle, u-va-Chayu echad v'gamu echad. It's just in malchus da'atzilus, you get the ayin of the yesh hanivra. So instead of the divide, the split being where? Between Oren Soch Lifnei Atzimtzum Acharat Tzimtzum Arishin. That's the dividing point. Now we've moved the dividing point between the Yesh, Ayin Yesh, to between Atzilus in general, and then Malchus Atzilus, and even Kavoid Malchus, the Dibur of Malchus, the Levush of Malchus. That is the Ayin of the Yesh HaNivra. The Masha Nivroi Masigim Bechinas Ha'ir V'Chayis Aliki Bechinas Yediyas Ametzias Levat. Aval Muhus Ha'ir Eina Masigim Klal. The Nivra has a Nivra knows that it exists, and the world has a Chayis. Some people confuse that and they think there's a different type of Chayis, but it's attainable. A human being is not. It's not like when you say Ayin Eina Musuk. Say to a person, everyone, sorry, you can see that you have Chayis. It's not just enough to have a brain and a heart and blood. There's a Ruach Chaim that enables a person to be alive. Not everyone acknowledges that. But it's not that it's something that a person cannot grasp and understand. So Nivroim are able to grasp the Ein Chayis Elikim. We can say, the despondence we had in Shuvi Yisrael, right? If you remember the despondence B'chol Avavcha, B'chol Nafshecha, the Kihu Chayecha, you can have a hisponimus about just like the Chayis Nivra. How that is, you can extrapolate. You can see the Chayis Ha'ilam, and there's a Chayis Eliki. So you have an awareness, but that's only Yediyas Ametzias Levad. It doesn't. You can still call it. It exists. Doesn't mean you know what it is. You don't understand the muhus of that oir. The muhus of that oir is ayin to you still. The very existence of it is one thing, but to know what it is ga'andrish. So bechinas ha'ayin shal yesh ha'nivra nikri yesh legabi amitis ha'ayin da'atzilus chuli. And just like we said in the first description, that the Oren Sishlach Rat Simtsum is right at the end of the last paragraph. We said legabi ayin rishnu bechinas yesh, that in relation to the Oren Sishlach Rat Simtsum, the Oren Sishlach Rat Simtsum is bechinas yesh. Maybe from the perspective of the Yesh HaNivra, we call it Ayin Sheina Musuk, and it's Loi Dova. It's not the Dova of it's only the Loi Dova. It's a Loi Dova in the sense that it's not the Dova of Biyah. But Lagabi, the orientation of the Atzimtzum, which is Bottle Lagamri, it's considered Yesh. Similarly, the Ayin of the Yesh HaNivra in this new configuration, Malchus of Atzilus, or maybe more specifically, the Levush of Malchus of Atzilus.
What does that mean, Levush of Malchus?
Dibur, the Eisis HaDibur, Kavod Malchus.
Right.
Kavod Malchus Chiyemeiru. Yeah?
Okay.
So it's a very chinas levush of Malchus, because Malchus is also part of Atzilus. Pneumius Malchus
So it's Dibur
is also Yichudei Lo.
Dibur de Malchus? Or is that Malchus de Malchus?
The Chitzenius Malchus.
Meaning?
The levush and the Kalim, the levush and the Kalim of Malchus. We're trying to create an imaginary line here between the Ayin of the Yesh Amiti and the Ayin of the Yesh Nivra. So there's a point where you have this sense. And the Gabi Atzilus is also it's Yesh. The Yesh Nivra, considers this Ayin. It says Yesh, this is where I'm coming from. This is my Ayin. I'm May Ayin. So this is my Ayin. It's not really Ayin. It's the way the Oir of Atzilus is Nisamsim to becomes an Ayin, which is Gabi Atzmais Bechinas Yesh. Which, remember, don't lose the plot over here. We're trying to explain Ugvuros Chida Beiru. In order that in order that there can be the emergence of the Ayin of the Yesh HaNivra, that it can create the Yesh HaNivra, there has to be a tzimtzum in the Oir, which is which Oir? The Oir Atzilus, the Oir of Zah, in relation to that. There has to be this tzimtzum.
The first pshat seems to fit a lot with the Indian, that after all this explaining, we've made very clear that the tzimtzum from the ayin of the Yesh Amiti and the ayin of the Yesh Nivra is the real Tzimtzum. Even the Honey Yeshma Ayin from the Ayin of the Yeshinevra to the Yesh Yeshinevra, that's one Tzimtzum. It's a bigger Chiddush though. The biggest Tzimtzum is from the Ayin to the Ayin. And that's the Tzimtzum Arishan. That makes sense, that fits, right? But over here we're saying that the huge Tzimtzum, the whole thing, the whole like gang of Seder Shtaushlos are just like in Atzilus. We never hear about any big Tzimtzum going on there. Just like Bria Tiyatira.
We have the parsing, which we're going to talk about.
Just like Bria Tiyatira, you also have a parasite. So it seems like it's just like one of those sequences.
You're right. You're right to an extent, and that's we're going to get into that now. We're going to say that good observation.
Whatever.
Yeah, we're gonna. This is although we've changed the location, we haven't fundamentally changed the principle.
Okay.
It's the same.
Right.
It's the same structure, just in a different location.
Right.
We've just changed the parameters, but we're not changing the conceptual apparatus that we're working with.
Right. And is there any connection between Das Ein, Das Tachni, and Sev and Mamali?
Yeah. That we're not. Sev Mamali is going to be the main topic of the third section. So, it's not
what Atzilus would change, like whether which parish we go with.
Right. Okay. We're all good, yeah?
Yeah.
Sorry, we're going fast, but it's it's a big long sentence, if you know what I mean. Like the inyan spread out. Maybe you want to hard cuts. It's good. I think it's good to have a bit of momentum. V'zeu b'derech klal. That's if we want to be kolol everything in that way. Omnam b'derech prat yoisa. But if we're going to be more pratistic, b'chinas das elyin u'b'chinas erin seif shlifnei atzimtzum, sha'eru b'chinas ayin shel yesh amiti, to b'chinas atzmus amoyin ukri yesh amiti, shezo amiti ze motzei, shemetzius in yatzmosei, u'inyin amiti ze yoisei. Va'erin seif nikra ayin, yoisei b'chinas ha'ari levad, u'botu legabi mekoirei, atru b'chinas ayin ve'efes mamash chuli. Right? So like we originally said. So that is the fundamental structure that we want to engage with, like what you said. The real action is in the Tzimtzum Arishin.
Right.
That's when things fundamentally change. But even in the Eirin Seif Shlifnei Tzimtzum, there are dargas. Ubezeh yesh beis madrigas. Bechinas etzem ha'oid v'spashtus ha'oid. I'm sure Kachin in Bas Lugani, right? Etzem v'spashtus ha'oid. That's just the Yebish's koyach, yichelis. It's not even a category of gilu. There's levels of being not ayin. There's levels of nothingness, of bittul, of dveikus. Bechinas ispashus ha'oid, bechinas ha'oid v'agilui, bechinas gilu ha'etzem, aval akil b'atzmusay adayin. Chlolos ha'oid, bechinas oid ha'kol b'atzmusay, u'botul mamish b'mekeirei, k'mei oid v'ziv ha'shemesh, k'shu kol b'esem ha'shemesh. Okay?
So Atmos is not Atmos ha'oid.
Why?
It says Atmos ha'oid, k'mishu kol b'atmos ha'moy. So it means that there's a thing called Atmos ha'oid and a thing called Atmos ha'oid. And the way that Atmos ha'oid is kolo in the first line,
where do you see
first line of the brackets.
Etzem ha'oid spashus ha'etzem ha'oid, k'mishu kol b'atmos ha'mo'oid.
Right.
Not Atmos ha'oid, Atmos ha'mo'oid.
Atmos ha'moy. Right.
Yeah. Atmos ha'mo'oid is Atmos ain't safe.
Atmos ain't safe, Atmos
The
ain't safe.
mo'oid, the source of light, not the light itself. Etzem ha'oid.
So is it Atmos ain't safe or is it Atmos ain't safe?
Different.
Or is it
What you asking? You asking me, are they different things or are they
different
what
things?
they called?
Are they different things?
What two things you asking about?
Well, and this done. Is it
Why are any
Atmos ha'oid? Is it Atmos ain't safe or is it Atmos ha'oid ain't safe? Atmos of the oid ain't safe. Or is that the same thing?
It's the Atmos of the oid. It's the Etzem of the oid. The oid, which is what is the Etzem of the oid? We said the Etzem of the oid is the Yechelis Lahai.
Right, and is there something that's
like a hiyuli? It's like a generative koyach. This is the hiyuli. The Eibush that has the koyach Lahai and Yechelis Shlei Lahai.
Right.
The Eibush is not mukhrich to shine.
Right.
He has the Yechelis. So what is the Makir Ha'oid? What is the Shadish Ha'oid? What is the Etzem Ha'oid? It's in this Yechelis. It's the Eibishter's Yechilas.
Is something higher than this Yechilas?
It's Atzmus itself. For sure.
So we're not talking about Atzmus then?
No.
About Atzmus tomorrow.
Although the Yechilas is totally one and bottle with the Atzmus itself.
Right, but the Yechilas has it in you that there's two things. There's two things.
But it's not like something totally separate. This is still before the Simpson, right?
No. But Yechilas doesn't mean that, the Yechilas
It's
do
like
this
Chochmah
or
and
that, which
Bina.
means there's two different things. Right?
Two different things which are one.
Right.
In Yechilas, there's no difference in the Yechilas. The Yechilas Lahom
Right,
and the
but
Yechilas, the same Yechilas.
But the fact that you have Yechilas means that there isn't in you in a period, even though if it's Bechlau and Ein Sof, it isn't, right?
Okay, so that's another sugi. What is
Right.
Yechilas? I'm not getting into that now. He's just saying in this bracket that when we talk about the Ein Sof Shnei Atzimtzum itself, there are dargas. Op Mokum Achem Mavur, the Yishlem is a heavish between Ayin le'efes. The efes will begin as bittul yesem Ayin. Pa bittul the etzem ha'oir will begin as efes. Pa bittul is pashas will begin as Ayin. Av mikom mokum bechlolas ha'oir, sham ein boy hu amiti mitzaratz. Shem Ayin boy hu amiti mitzaratz mei. The yesem begin as Ayin befes mamish begin as hedem mitzis tova machuli. Okay. So he just wants to go, and it's important that you should, there's a whole arichas about the dargas of oir shlifnei atzimtzum. Basi legani toshim emhei is a good marimokim if you want to get a better understanding of that. Sefer Erechim, of course.
They're not even up to that yet.
Also, Yossi's shir on this is also very good. He'll give you a whole. He'll give you a whole map. Lifnei atzmus, ma'or, yechilas, etzem ha'oir, Ein Sof, oir ha'meir, alei saratzin,
the levels just tells you the
tzimtzum ha'rishain, he es spheres agnozos, spheres ein kates, kadmin kadmusai. There's all, if you want to build up the whole map of Ein Sof Shnei Atzimtzum, there's a whole arichas. Atim Netzav and Tavshem Memches. Is also another Maimah which talks about how Yidden and Mushush even higher than Atzmus. Because once you call it Atzmus, you're already giving it a name. So we said before, a name is already a tzir. It's already a Hagbal.
Right.
If it's called Atzmus, there must be something beforehand. The thing that you can't call it. Anyway, there's a lot going on there. I don't know if any of the footnotes here are that useful. Let's see, 1 second. Maybe. I haven't looked them up. I think Boston Ligani Memhei. Atim Netzavim Memches.
It seems like a lot.
Obviously, of course, you got Samach Vav and base. That's if you really want to look this up.
It seems like there's a Maimon of Zion that could play tests around there. I get quoted the whole time. I've been 5 times already.
I think this is Samach the Samach.
Right.
I think, if I'm not wrong. But okay, look it up. Machana took the Nunzain, so you haven't got the Nunzain to look up. Okay, weiter.
Yeah.
We beginnen das Tachten. Who we begin as Ein Sof Hamatzil Ela Netzalim. Just like we said again in the previous. This paragraph, the bottom of Samach Beis, is only the B'derech Klal. B'derech Prat is going back to the structure he introduced in the previous paragraph, the end of Samach Aleph and most of Samach Beis. Yeah.
Right.
So beginnes das Tachten, beginnes Ein Sof Hamatzil Ela Netzalim. No, sorry. No, now he's combining them. He's combining them. Beg your pardon. I made a mistake. Das Tachtin here is the Ein Sof Hamatzil and Netzalim. So it's combining the two. So we originally stretched the whole thing out. Yeah? Yesh amiti atim zeinzim. Ayin shel yesh amiti yin tzich l'nei atimsim. Ayin shel yesh nivra yin tzich l'achar atimsim. Atzilus. The whole lot, yeah? And then yesh nivra olam esbiyah.
Right.
Now we're keeping das elyin where we had it. The yin tzich l'nei atimsim.
Right.
Das Tachtim, where does that begin? at the just like we had this sort of this in the Derech Klal, we sort of made Atzilus was Das Elyon, Yichudei Law, and then in Malchus Atzilus was the Ein Shel Yesh Nivra. Now we're going to take the Malchus of Ein Seif HaMatzil, the Malchus of the Esespheres HaGnuzis, the Malchus of Ein Seif Lifnei HaTzimtzum, and that's going to become the Ayin.
What's the Atseret Knuzis compared to Ein Seif Lifnei HaTzimtzum?
Ein Seif Lifnei HaTzimtzum has Esespheres too.
Okay.
Called Esespheres HaGnuzis.
Right, we learned that a while back.
Now, so there's a Madrega in his Pashtus Ha'or. The Ein Seif Lifnei HaTzimtzum, he said Etzem Ha'or, Pashtus Ha'or, Pashtus Ha'or, Atzmei, Gilu Atzmei. Then you have Alois Harotzi in the way it's going to be anticipating the creation of the world. So if you get to the very last Madrega of the Oir, Shlifnei HaTzimtzum, calling that here Ein Seif HaMatzil, I'm giving it a more specific place, Malchus the Ein Seif.
Okay.
That becomes the Ayin Shel HaYesh HaNivra. All of the Ilamas, everything that comes after the Tzimtzum, is called the Yesh HaNivra. Is Das Tachtin.
Right. Okay.
Including Atzilus, Biyah, and everything. Bechinas Das Tachtin, whom bechinas Ein Seif HaMatzil El HaNe'etzalim. V'hainu bechinas Gilui HaKav. So we're calling the entire everything that comes after the Tzimtzum, we're calling Gilui HaKav. We're putting it under the category of Kav. So we don't have to. First of all, it's easier to work with name-wise. We've got multiple names. Ak, Keser, Olamatoyu, Tikkun, Atzilus, Kav. Okay? Gilui HaKav. There was the Eirens before the Eibusha created the world. Before the worlds were created. Yeah?
Right.
The Ein Seif was Mamala Mokim Achalo. Everything was filled with Ein Seif. That's all there was. Tzimtzum Eirei. Tzimtzum Arishain. Mokim Achalo, Mokim Poni. And then what happened? Meir by Eirakav. The Eirakav was Meir al Yedei HaTzimtzum. Yeah? Chazav Heir al Yedei HaTzimtzum. So the Eir was, where is it coming from? It's coming from the Ein Seif Lifnei HaTzimtzum. It's coming al Yedei HaTzimtzum, durch the Tzimtzum. So it's a different type of Eir. It's called Eirakav. Kav HaMidah has elements of the bleak wool of the Ein Seif Lifnei HaTzimtzum, but it's also got elements of wool. And gradually that enabled the emergence of the Elamis. Through other Tzimtzum in Parsois, different things, but that's the critical moment. Right? That's what you was describing for. This is where the critical action happens. Shogam came bechinas malchus da atzilus techlolus. Remember we talked about elamus techlolus? That you have elamus beprotis, which is atzilus bri yitzir asiya, as they are positioned within the broader Seder Talshus, because of above atzilus you have keser, and above keser you're going to have akudin, you're going to have matoyu, maybe you're going to have ak. Then you're going to have Tzimtzum Rishon, then you're going to have Ein Seif Lifnei HaTzimtzum, you're going to have Atzmos Ein Seif. But when we talk about Eilamus Techlolus, then Atzilus and Eilamus Biyah become Eilam HaSiyah. Keser becomes Eilam HaYitzirah. Ak becomes Eilam HaBriyah. And Ein Seif Lifnei HaTzimtzum, the Esespheres HaGnuzis become Atzilus Techlolus.
And where's Tehu over here? You said that it's also higher than Keser. When you did it. What is it? Is it somewhere there?
Nekudin, yeah. Eilam HaNekudin.
Is it before Adam Kalvin or after?
After.
Uh-huh.
Shugam came bechinas. This is what is the Gilo Erakav. Shugam came bechinas Malchus da Atzilus Techlolus. This is why I told you Malchus da Ein Seif. Atzilus Techlolus is Ein Seif Lifnei HaTzimtzum. The Esespheres HaGnuzis. So Malchus da. So the last Madrega is Malchus. That is the Gilo Erakav. Ki yudu da Atzilus Techlolus u bechinas Ein Seif Lifnei HaTzimtzum. The Gilo Erakav u bechinas Malchus da Atzilus Techlolus chuli k'mo shechosu mokum achim. So that becomes the ayin of the Yesh HaNivra. That is the Das Tachtin. Ukshem shebechinas Malchus da Atzilus haprotis hu bechinas ayin shel Yesh HaNivra chuli kanal. Just like when we said over here at the bottom of Samach Beis, that it's the Malchus of Atzilus, which is the ayin of the Yesh HaNivra of the Ilmas Biyah, k'mo ken bechinas Malchus da Atzilus hachlodis hu bechinas ha'ayin shel Yesh HaNetzah. So that's the transition point. The netzolim, all the netzolim, gam bechinas ak shel mayla me'atzilus. How do you bechinas yesh legabi ein seif? Ad shenikra adam debriya tichlolos. The fact that we can call it adam debriya tichlolos is because legabi ein seif shnei atzimtzum is bechinas yesh. V'isavusam hu bechinas hakav. Shu bechinas ha'ayin sheyesh hanetzol shenikra ayin legabi hanetzolim. This is not just in relation to the kelim, even the Eiris. So we're shifting our perspectives a little bit here. It's hard. You've got to remember one moment you're saying Olam Atzilus is Olam Achdus, Rishus Hayachid, Bottle Gamri is the Ayin Yichud Ilah. Yeah, that's a bit klal. I say derech klal. What do you mean derech klal?
Does that mean if somebody asks you a question and tests you, answer them back? What derech klal means?
What do I mean by derech klal? Think about it like this: derech klal is if you pull yourself away from something, just like a mashal. If you're looking at something from a much bigger distance, certain things merge.
Right.
Like the fine differences between them are not so discernible. So you can look at something b'derech klal. Broadly speaking, you could make this distinction, division, and you could live happily ever after, and you could live in a world where the ayin of the Ein Social Lifnei Tzimtzum and the Ein Social Achar Tzimtzum is all the same ayin. It's all Yichud Eilah. It's the ayin of the Yesh HaMiti.
They're both the kav.
They're both like the Ein Social, just like the Ziv HaShemesh Kshu B'guf Kader HaShemesh. There's no major distinction between them. Oh yeah, obviously it's gradual, but there's not. You just like you have in Ein Social Lifnei Tzimtzum, you have different targets. You have Etzem Ha'ir, Vispashas Ha'ir, and everything. We can just broaden the category and say, okay, and then you have the Ein Social Achar Tzimtzum, and then you have the Eiris of Atzilus and the Kelim of Atzilus, and it's all things that are completely bottled to Elikus. They all fit into the same basket. Doesn't mean they're not distinct from each other, but they're and that's when you look at it, they're klal. When you're looking at it from a certain height, from a certain distance. But they're prat, if you want to focus a bit more, where is the fault line? Because remember the original question at the end of the last year was, how does this ayin split? We said it's one ayin that splits. How does it split and who splits it? What's the nature of the split and who's doing the splitting?
Right.
And so here we're getting to the core of it in the Tzimtzum HaRishon. That's how it's split. Tzimtzum HaRishon is the method by which it's split.
When we say Tzimtzum, we're talking about the Siluk or the Gili A?
It's Tzimtzum, which is the prerequisite for the Gilu A.
So it's the Siluk? What Tzimtzum is this? What type of Tzimtzum?
Tzimtzum HaRishon, Derech Siluk, yeah.
So the Siluk of the A is our Tzimtzum here?
Yes, yeah,
okay.
Yeah, Tzimtzum HaRishon. I mean, it's only there. It's not kipshute. There's no siluk. It's no physical removal.
Right, it didn't happen.
It's a helam. Siluk means helam. It's a helam on the O. Read the file I sent you. You'll appreciate what I'm talking about.
What file?
I sent you a file.
When?
A while ago.
How did you have what emails on?
Look in your emails.
PAD.
Yeah. In my thesis, you'll see where I explain.
PhD.
Yeah. So you'll see this.
Oh.
Okay. So now we've got to a very good point where we can stop in the moment. We're talking about Eirakav. Eirakav is this sort of transitional moment. The Malchus, the Atzilus Techlolus, Malchus the Ein Sof, is able to be Meir Achar Tzimtzum. And you have the Ein Sof Achar Tzimtzum, which is the Bechinas Yesh. And so we still haven't really answered the question. How does it all work? Obviously the answer is Tzimtzum. That's how it all works. But what is the Tzimtzum? And what is it doing to the this Ein Sof, which was Lefnei Tzimtzum, which was completely bottled? It wasn't just ayin. In a sense, it was Ein Musug. It was ayin, mamash ayin. So we said the ayin was boyamiti. mitzad atzmei. So how does this ayin, which is amitim mitzad atzmei, which is completely dovuk, transform into a yesh? How does it become possible to be a yesh? From its own perspective, yeah. How can it be a yesh? So we're even asking, how in Oden Soshlik now Tzimtzum do you get Malchus the Ein Sof? So again, Malchus the Ein Sof is the same category as Malchus the Atzilus in a sense. We got Ois to use, and you have all the things, the Levush, and all the Inkbeit Malchus Chayimeru, Graschi Daberu. It's all because of Tzimtzum, as we're going to see. That will be for next time, Be'ez Hashem.